Hey, I'm John G.
Hey, I'm Craig B. Let's conversate. Hey there, I'm Craig B.
John G.
And welcome back to another episode of ConBroSationalists.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have a pretty sensitive topic this time.
Yeah.
I know we said in the last episode that we've
got a couple topics.
Yeah, we've got a couple of topics, and I'll just be honest. One of them is religion, and this one we're going to discuss about pro-life or pro-choice, because I think it's a topic that you can never have enough conversation about it, because it impacts so many different people in so many different ways. And again, this is one of those topics where we talked about people are very staunch in their opinions, but they don't want to come and have a rational conversation at the table.
Yeah, it's either one way or the other.
Right. It's that pendulum again.
Yeah, there's definitely no middle ground on this one.
No, and I think depending upon your stance, right, and depending upon your let me spit that out again. Depending upon your background and kind of how you were taught and how you were raised, right? I think that's what drives a lot of people's beliefs and opinions on certain things, and especially when it comes to this, because it's such fundamentally a faith-based argument a lot of times that it ties back into the prior conversation that we had about religion and kind of where we think religion's going to be. Right, I have to go back and look at the question. Remember, it was a philosophical question that we had about.
Yeah, will it still exist in 500 years?
Right. Yeah, what's the? Do we expect religion to exist as it still does today, or whatever? And the world is becoming a very, very bizarre place. As I've grown up, and I'm just a few years older than you.
Yeah, just a couple.
Just a couple. And I've seen a lot of different things, and I've seen a lot of. I'm fortunate, to be in the military and kind of traveled the world and seen some of those things where those countries where women don't have any rights at all. And I'm a staunch believer in that we're all created equal for a reason. And man and woman, we are created to help propel the human race. The problem is that if something goes wrong in that process, then there has to be the ability for people to have an option to do the things that are medically right. But medicine is not just physical; it's also mental. It's the emotional health as well. And I know from my perspective, I can remember being 19 years old, married to my still wife at the time, and being presented at the doctor's office. Hey, you got a choice. You can either have your wife or you can have your child, but you're not going to have both. I'm sorry. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So what are my options here? Well, there's only one option. The option at that point in time was to terminate the pregnancy and try again. And that's exactly what we had to do. We terminated the pregnancy. We tried again. We got pregnant again, and fortunately, it was a completely different pregnancy. It was almost day and night.
Yeah.
And it's not. We didn't take it lightly because we were young. Like, we had just gotten married. I'd only been with my then wife at that time. I think maybe a year and some change. And it was just one of those things. That's a heavy burden on a decision to be made at that young age, that early into your wedding.
Oh yeah.
Right, that early into your marriage. And we even now, some almost 30 years later, we still think about that decision and the fact that we had to make that decision. And all we can say is that I'm glad that decision was available to us. Because if it wasn't, my family right now would not be the family that I have. I have no idea what my family would look like based upon those decisions.
Wouldn't look like me sitting next to you.
You're probably correct. This probably wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Because if say I had lost my wife during the pregnancy for any number of reasons, right? Because she's high risk And pregnancy has a high mortality rate anyway in the best of circumstances.
If you haven't seen a pregnancy, if you haven't seen a child be birthed,
right,
it truly is a miracle that
yes,
the mother doesn't die every time.
Yep, absolutely.
It's scary,
right? And especially,
and I'm not the one pooping out the baby,
right?
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's
well,
scary.
And especially now, they have C-sections or vaginal births,
Yep.
or they have all kinds of what are they called, doulas and all that kind of stuff, where they can have a child in the water, and they do all this kind of crazy stuff. But that's the point is that for me, I will be and always will be absolutely pro-choice, because again, at the end of the day, it's all about conserving life as it needs to be.
You have to conserve life. You have to take politics out of life.
Yes.
That's where we've screwed up.
Yes.
We've let the political system make choices.
That political machine, right?
For medical procedures, and it should be separate. You can't. Man, it's hard to let a fairly one-sided thinking group of people make a choice for millions of females across the world.
Yes.
And the bigger issue is that we make a lot of decisions for females. There's no decisions made for...
Not really.
There's no decisions made if you were to go molest a child. There's no repercussions except for that you go to jail for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, castrate me, right?
Right.
But because the male body for some reason is so sacred, you just don't touch it. You have no restrictions against it.
Right.
But anything female related in today's world is a hoop that has to be jumped through.
Sure. And let's just look at the process, right? The process of what happens during creation of a child. Generally, birth control is the onus of who? The female. If there is conception and there is a decision to be made, where does the bulk of the responsibility lie at that point? The female, right? Outside of the man being forced to pay, right? What does he really contribute to that whole process?
Just
moral support, mostly.
Moral support.
Mostly.
There.
And that's if they're there.
Yeah.
That's if they're there. And that's you want to get over. We need to get over this mindset of it's all the women's responsibility. It's not.
No.
It takes two people to create a child, right? And the biggest issue with that is that if you look at the fundamental belief of how a child is supposed to be created, a child is supposed to be created out of two people who love each other. Correct?
Yep.
Right. That's how procreation and is supposed to be. But as well as I do that that's far from all the instances of the cases of women becoming pregnant.
Yeah.
There are those exceptions.
There's terrible ways that people that women become
absolutely
pregnant.
Incest. There is SA, which we can't necessarily say that, right? Yeah. Because there are certain instances where a man forces himself upon, right? So there are those one-offs that happen more often than people are aware of, and if there weren't the ability to do with that situation as they need to, you think that the American society is bad now? Just imagine what it'd be like if all of that was removed, that choice was no longer an option. What do you think is going to continue to happen to the American society?
It's going to just continue to get worse. It's just going to spiral downwards.
Yeah.
It's such a huge, fundamentally just flawed part of our system, because women already are up against a wall.
Oh, yeah.
In everything that they do.
In all facets.
So then you start telling them what they can and can't do.
Right.
On top of a perpetual thing of that will bother them forever.
Yeah.
Whether it's a legit conception.
Right.
Like, all of the hormones and things that go on in women, like, already screws with their brains enough.
Yes.
And then you have pregnancies that go bad, which also, like, you could have done everything right, and it screws with them.
Yes.
And they think about it for years. And then you're telling them that Joe Blow can go put himself on you, and you have to have his child.
Right.
So then you have to look at somebody every day that reminds you of what happened however many years ago.
Yeah.
The choice to give your kid up for adoption is also a terrible idea, because in today's world, in today's United States, it's easier to adopt a child from out of country
Absolutely.
than it is in the United States.
Yes.
So you think about putting a kid into the system that's flawed.
Right.
Because I have friends that foster kids and stuff, and I hear some of the stories about soon as mom or dad clean up or whatever, those kids get taken out of this good foster home, back to the original parents, and then it spirals down most of the time again.
Yes.
Then they get thrown back into the system, and it's just this...
It's this ping pong thing.
It's this ping pong thing, so the kids are never given a chance. You're telling a female that has a terminally ill baby that you still have to have that baby that's just going to die.
Yeah.
We shouldn't bury kids under any circumstance.
Right, and especially not in this particular instance.
Yeah, like, you don't have life to bury it.
Yeah.
It's a screwed up subject.
It absolutely is, but it
pisses me off to no end.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm because I know the history of you and your wife and the things that occurred for you guys, and it's not just because you engage in the act of how do I say this without saying it, of reproduction, right? You engage in the acts of reproduction doesn't necessarily mean that, one, it's guaranteed, and that, two, it's going to be viable, right? And so that's why medicine has come as far as it has, is to give women those options, and men, if it's a marriage and it's a healthy union, and that's what they want to do, and they want to have kids, this is one of those options that they have. Like, if any one of these things happens along the way, right? Then you have an option with which to deal with the situation. The problem is that there's certain kind of milestone dates, right? That generally they don't want to perform certain actions after those dates. Much in my case with my grandson, right? Like, by the time that everything was recognized, it was far enough along in the process that it wasn't going to be viable, right? Like, it wasn't really generally a good option.
Yeah.
Because I knew at that point that the mental aspects of that decision were going to far outweigh anything physical that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Because the body is going to deal with that and recover from that fairly rapidly.
Yeah.
It's not going to be overnight or a couple of days. It's a couple of weeks, right? But the mental aspect of having to make that decision and know that you've done that's a Herculean task for anybody in the healthiest of minds to contend with.
Well, I think what everybody forgets, like, staying on that same, like, the mind is going to struggle to get over it with it a lot longer. Like, on the one-off occasions where people were out being dumb and happened to make a mistake, and they choose to not go through with that pregnancy because they're too young, whatever the case may be.
Right.
The having to deal with that, it may not affect them now.
Right.
But I know at some point down the road, they're gonna have to live with the choice that they made, and it will, I believe, unless you're just fairly heartless, that
it weighs. It weighs on. Yeah.
It will weigh on you for probably the rest of your life.
Yes. And that's why I said, the decision that my wife and I had to make some 30, man, it's been 30 years ago now, was one that we didn't take lightly in any stretch of the imagination. And we always wonder, like, hey, what what would this person have been like?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what would, because you're always going to have those what ifs. And a lot of times, I look at it like when my father passed away, right? Like, you look at, like, what if we had done this, right? Like, would it have prolonged his life? Would he still be around? But you can't live on those what ifs. You have to deal with the facts as they are presented to you, and you have to make a decision based on that. And the more, and I think this is just a mental health thing that you kind of learn as you get a little older. You learn to process things a little better. And one of the things that I had to do is I had to kind of deal with that in the moment. And then I didn't lock it away. I stored it away to kind of circle back to when it wasn't so fresh, right? And it's that scar, that wound, right?
Yeah, whenever you deal with things when they're fresh, sometimes those dealings seem to be irrational.
Yes. So, you don't have clear focus, and you're so wrapped up in the emotion of what's going on that you don't necessarily have clear thoughts.
Yeah. It's like when you rip a Band-Aid off, literally, and as you rip it, you're like,
"Oh, that hurts!"
Like, it's that reaction,
right?
But then after you get it off and you look at it, it's like, oh well, it's healing. It's like, I lost some hair on my arm, but it's that initial reaction that you have to step back from and not take action on.
Yeah,
you've got to reel back, let the clouds settle a little bit, and then actually process the information.
Right, and I think what's happening now is we're living in a society that it's such an instant gratification, right? Like we've talked about it with everybody has a cell phone, and you have this is my phrase, we have a world full of smartphones and dumb people.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who do really, really dumb things. And this is all I'm going to say is what year is it? We're in the year 2022. This is not 1822. This is not 1922. And women's evolution has come a long way. And the things that they can do is basically up to them. So much like they did with the vaccines, right? My choice, my body on whether to get the vaccine, that's all well and good. Why is this any of your business to go in and tell a woman that she can or cannot maintain that pregnancy to full term if she does or does not want it? It's the same. To me, it's the same mindset, right? But we're not, as much as you want to say it, nobody forced you to get a vaccine. There are things that were put in place to make it more enticing for you to go get a vaccine. But if you don't get the vaccine and you contract the illness that comes along with that, the consequences are 100% yours. Well, it's the same thing in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, let's scale it back. It's not even the vaccine, right? I mean, the same people that pushed to overturn all these abortion laws are the same people that wouldn't wear a mask.
Correct.
Because it's their body, their choice, right?
Right.
We go back to that my body, my choice, except for whenever it deals with a female.
Right.
Then it's a bunch of rich people's choices over women's choices.
Then it's their body, my choice, right? Yeah. That's not how this needs to be.
And if you're going to strip rights away from women, then strip my rights away too.
Yeah.
If I go do something stupid, like I said, castrate me, do whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to do those because I'm not that type of person.
Right.
But it can't just be all on the female side. They can't bear all the weight. They can't do all these things. Like, I watched my wife give birth both ways, vaginally and through C-section, as well as have miscarriages. Like we've been through the whole matrix of it.
Right.
And the first thing that I told her was like, hey, when we're done with kids, I'll go get snipped.
Right.
Like you've done enough. Like I've watched you almost bleed out. I feel like, even though it's like a normal everyday occurrence, like
it's just a normal amount of blood. But
yeah, like it's just a normal. That's pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like that's having a kid.
Yeah.
But like in my eyes, like holy crap.
Should we be hanging IV bags full of blood?
Like.
Yeah.
Like pump some of this into her.
Hook her up.
Yeah, like situation. Like
right.
It's the least I can do as a man to step up and be like, you don't need to go get your tubes tied, which is going to screw you up. You don't need to take drugs. You don't need to do all these things that are just going to make your being worse than
right.
it already is because of the choices that we make females make.
Right.
It's not my choice.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
Absolutely.
You have to live with those choices.
Yeah.
And you will. You will live with those choices.
You will. And whether I mean it's both ends of the spectrum, right? It's either positive or negative. Generally, in the vast majority of the cases, and again, I can only go by what my personal experience is that a lot of times when those decisions are made, the people that are making those decisions, they are not making them lightly. It's not, I went out and I got drunk and I slept with somebody I shouldn't have, and I'm going to go out and take plan B. It's not that case. In most of the situations that I'm aware of, and I'm going to get to two people that I know of here shortly. Most situations that I'm aware of, it's they were in loving, healthy relationships. This is a byproduct of their love. They wanted to have children, and then at some point, something in medicine just said, "Hey, this is not viable," and something happens. And we know one person who lives in Dallas who had to deal with something very, very similar to that. And then we know I know personally I worked with somebody who had to about right after the first trimester, they determined that there was something wrong with the baby, and it was not developing fully. Right, there was something that happened, and it's just a single cell, and it splits and amplifies. Much, I hate to make this comparison, but cancer is the same way. Cancer starts out as healthy cells, right, and then something deviates in the genetic string, right, and it just happens. And in this particular instance, like, they knew that they were going to give birth to a live baby, but that particular lifespan was going to be severely shortened to the point of where it was going to be hours, possibly minutes. And if I remember right, I think they ended up getting a couple hours. But you can't tell me that is the end product that they were hoping for. It's not.
It's not fair to that little human being
Correct.
To be alive for however long in misery.
Yes, and struggle. But unfortunately, in her particular instance, right, like she didn't know like exactly what was going to happen until it was a little bit too late in the game, because there are milestones, right, before you can make those decisions. And this was unfortunately just one of those where during the normal process of checking, the health of the baby and doing the fetal diagnostics and all that kind of stuff, they noticed something wasn't right.
Yeah.
But at that point, there was no other option. Had they known probably earlier in the pregnancy, it probably would have been, okay, we need to terminate this right now, and then get healthy and try and figure out and do some stuff medically to see if maybe there's just something wrong with the mother in particular instance, that they can't carry a viable fetus to the culmination of a pregnancy, or maybe there's something in the father's genetics and their DNA. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could possibly cause a pregnancy to be strained, I guess is the best word that I can come up with, because it's not guaranteed, and just because you go through the process of reproduction doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a viable, healthy pregnancy.
Yeah.
But the problem with this is that it doesn't matter. The minute that your little pea stick says, "Hey, you're pregnant," at that point is when they're saying that this is a human life. But they're not giving anybody any choices. Your only choice is to carry full term, which I think is, I'm sorry, we're not.
Well, and look at it this way.
We're not Neanderthals anymore.
Yeah, and look at it this way too. Maybe if we had a system that was better set up, to where people felt comfortable in, like, well, I can have this baby. Like, I'm not ready to take care of this child, but I can have this baby because there's a system out there that finds good homes for these babies.
Right.
But no, like, as good a jobs as me and my wife have, and we have two beautiful kids that are growing like weeds and super smart. I think if we were to go try to adopt a child, it costs stupid amounts of money.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And we know people that have been trying to adopt for a while. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they've just been put through the ringer, and I still don't think they've been able to adopt.
No, they just get met with roadblock after roadblock
so
after
it's
roadblock.
Just like, we don't even have a system to give these people, much like we don't have systems for really anything.
No.
I mean, our military comes back. There's nothing to. There's a few things now, but there's a long time that there was nothing for when they came back to rehabilitate them into a normal world of where they're not being shot at and blown up and all those things, because they're a little bit different.
Yeah,
most of the time,
and then, or they get triggered by something, and they go back to that place, right? Because they haven't been given the tool set to process it.
It's our prison system that you go to prison, right? Maybe you didn't do that such a bad thing. Maybe you got caught with the drugs, right? Maybe you were forced into a lifestyle of just because that's what your family's done. You didn't really necessarily want to, but then you go to prison for 5 years. You come out, there's nothing for you.
Right.
There's no family, or the family that's there is what got you there to begin with.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to hire you because you have this black mark. We have no rehabilitation for anything. If you screw up in life, it's like, well...
Yeah, tough luck, buddy. Tough luck. Yeah, better luck next time.
Sorry you didn't make better choices.
Right.
Sometimes people make stupid choices.
I mean, and that's just it, right? But that's part of the human condition, right? You're going to make stupid decisions because at some point you don't. I refer to kids a lot because they don't know at their age, right? Like they don't understand that for every action there's a consequence, right? Like they don't understand that paradigm, and it's same thing here. We know better, but we're just choosing to allow somebody else to say, no, you can't do that. This is no longer your choice. I'm going to make all these decisions for you, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you were God.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You want to keep faith out of it. You want to keep religion out of it, and faith and religion is God created everything, right? That was the whole point of where the society the earth has come from, was from the religious perspective on that side. You're not my God, and if you expect me to worship you, guess again, I don't worship anybody.
Yeah. And I guarantee some of the people making these decisions have also went down that same road.
Oh, it's almost a foregone conclusion that they've been down that road.
In fact, probably later in their careers.
Yes.
Because it seems like there's probably quite a bit of scandalous things that happen when you have more money and power, things like that. You go to places that maybe you shouldn't go to. One thing leads to another. You end up getting somebody pregnant that you didn't want to get pregnant, and you throw a little money their way and say, I need you to get this done, and...
Right, you just...
It's okay for you.
Right. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah, but every other female across the world...
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah, so you know, I don't know that I've told you this. In my almost 50 years, I've never gone to a protest in my life. I went to my first protest 2 or 3 weeks ago.
No kidding.
Yeah. It was pro-choice because it's something that I feel passionately enough about because again, I have that personal tie to it because it has impacted my life personally, that I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go and help. Now you have to understand, on both sides of the conversation, there are extremists on both ends.
Yeah.
So we're out there, we're doing our thing, and then, of course, then there's the pro-life, and it begins at conception and all that kind of stuff, right? Like I get the mindset, I understand the logic. The difference is that I'm going to sit down at a table and have a conversation with you about trying to understand your side of the coin, not them. They were out there and basically saying we're going to hell and
you're murderers.
Yeah, and you're murderers and you're doing all this kinds of stuff, and that's not. It's already a tough enough decision when you're being forced with it, but then when you come out and you get shamed, right? You get shamed because you had to make this decision because for one reason or another, this was a decision that you needed to make. There should be no shame in it. And
and the people that are casting that shame should know better.
Right.
Because honestly, if those are the people that I'm going to see in heaven, which I'm not, but if those were the people I was going to see, I'd rather go down there.
Right.
To where people are going to tell me I'm wrong to my face.
Right.
And
the devil you know versus the devil you don't.
Yeah, like I'm sorry, but you going to church every Sunday and coming out and calling people murderers and all of this stuff, that's not what church was built for.
No.
Church was built to better the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
You to be a better person. You to spread that faith in a positive way.
Right.
Not a negative way.
Correct. And I just go back to the one thing that I always remembered, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Nobody is going to be throwing anything, because everybody they have skeletons in their closet. Yeah. They've done shady stuff for whatever reason.
We've all done stupid things.
We've all done stupid things.
Yeah.
The difference is that we typically grow from them. But here we are again. I want to go back to it's 2022, but yet this is a very archaic and very Neanderthal way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that we're just going to go back and because it says this in the Bible, which from what I've done, it doesn't say anything about that. But hey, by all means.
Well, it's how you interpret it.
Right. From a dead language, Aramaic, that nobody knows how to speak, 2,000 years ago or whatever that time frame is now. Interpreted into another language that nobody hardly speaks, which is Hebrew, and then it's passed down, and then everybody is, it's subject to interpretation. We talked about that in the episode that hasn't aired yet, but it might at some point.
Yeah.
We don't know, but it's just one of those things. I think you have to take, when it comes to end of life decisions, right? End of life decisions, and somebody wants to.
It needs to be that person's decision.
Yes, it's their decision.
Unless it's like you're 80 years old and you're not coherent.
You're
in like a vegetable state.
You're incapacitated.
You're not in a position that you can make that choice because of how sick you are or whatever.
Right.
Then it becomes the family's decision.
And then in most of those cases, you have a medical proxy, and your wishes are generally written out. Hopefully they're. There are a handful of circumstances where not all of those decisions are done, and all I can think of is it's years ago. What was her name? Terry Schiavo. She was a person that had some medical conditions. She was not quite all there, but she was on a feeding tube, and they decided to basically pull the tube out and let her starve to death because they considered, for whatever reason, that her life wasn't viable. So, in the grand scheme of things, that's okay.
Yeah, somehow that's okay.
Right, a court of law can deem that's okay. But yet, a woman who decides not to carry through with everything that comes along with a pregnancy, because it's not a walk in the park. I don't just because it happens all the time doesn't mean.
No, it's terrible.
Doesn't mean that it's an easy thing to deal with.
My wife was miserable through both pregnancies.
Right.
She was anemic. She I think had morning sickness through the entire, and it wasn't even just morning. It was like all day sickness.
Yeah. She was just sick all the time.
Yeah, like she lost tons of weight. Like, I don't know. I'll leave it with this. At the end of the day, I have no business making a choice for you. You have no business making a choice for me medically. We have to stop thinking that I'm man and I make rules and dragging you by your hair through the rocks. That's not who we are anymore. And then you can't pick and choose. You can't say, it's my body, my choice, and not want to wear a mask or get vaccinated to help protect people, and then 2 weeks later say, well, you're a murderer because you were taken advantage of, and now you've got a baby living inside you, and oh, by the way, you're going to have to take it to full term, otherwise you'll go in prison. And by the way, if anybody knows that you're carrying it, they'll also be fined too and go to prison.
Yeah.
those people need to be in a different area. They need to be voted out. They need to, we've got to stop going backwards.
But yeah, I've seen this phrase before, and I think we probably need to make it kind of the mantra of what we're doing here is stop making stupid people famous, because you have a former person in political office who is probably been one of the worst ones that I know of in recent history, that had this way of thinking that has now become a plague on the political machine. And I don't remember as a kid things being this divisive as they are now because of this one way of thinking. And I hope that in the next couple of election cycles that we can kind of weed out that crap and get back to a political machine that can make decisions for the broad public that are better based on
the public
and not just what they think specifically is okay for them.
No, there's a huge, and we're getting off topic a little bit here, but there's a huge graph that I came across. I don't even know what I was looking at, but you can see where bipartisan bills and stuff were being passed, and the percentage of bipartisan bills has just nosedived.
Right.
Like in the 80s, there was tons of bipartisanship. You didn't get full. You're never going to get full because we have different opinions.
Yeah.
But then the 90s it started going down, 2000s it started going down, and now it's just tanked.
Yeah.
Now we're in today's crapshoot.
Right, and that's, I mean, unfortunately, that's just where we are with it, right? And I hope that I've expressed enough in this particular segment that we think that it is a woman's choice, it is a family's choice, but it is not man's choice to tell a woman what they can and cannot do with their body. If I want to get a tattoo on my face, you can't tell me that I can't do that. But yet this is almost the same kind of thing. Yeah. I want to get a tattoo on my face, and you're telling me I can't do it. Yeah. Why? As I used to say as a kid, you're not the boss of me. Yeah. I can do whatever I want. But in this particular case, you're telling me that I can't get the tattoo on my face. But two, if I do, then I'm going to go to jail. And if anybody else knows about it, you're telling me the tattoo artist is going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows about it is going to go. You can't. Does that make what sense does that make? To me, it makes absolutely no sense.
Well, no, and it makes even, like I said, it makes even less sense when we pick and choose when it makes sense.
Right.
For whatever our agenda is, we pick and choose on when it's going to make sense.
Right. But that seems to be the new argument sticking point. Right? I'm not going to listen to anything that you say. I'm going to get all this anecdotal evidence that's just going to support my theory.
Yeah.
No matter how far fetched it is, and that's all I'm going to listen to.
I'm going to pick 10 words out of a 600-page document that says that my reason of thinking is correct.
Right.
Even though if you add the sentences to those pages.
Yeah. The whole document itself.
It would completely change on what you're trying to say.
Right.
But that's the world that we live in.
Absolutely. It's crazy. We can. This is one of those topics I don't think we're ever going to solve.
No.
And all we're trying to do is kind of bring light to it, because it is a sensitive topic for an enormous amount of people, and some people are going to be more animated about this than we are. We have our stance. Or I have my stance, you have your stance. Ours are pretty much kind of in confluence with one another. But there are other people out, and I've had those conversations that with people that say, nope, the minute conception occurs, that's when the life begins. And I'm not in disagreement, but what I am in disagreement with is the ability on what that woman does with her body.
Yeah, and I'll just say, women, I support you.
Yeah, we both support you. As much as I can possibly support a woman.
Yeah. I
do. I mean, you guys, from the very beginning until the very end, you guys deal with just an inordinate amount of crap I mean, from any point, you're too fat, you're too thin, your hair is too long, your hair is too short, your teeth aren't wide enough, your teeth are too wide, your eyes are too big, you're too small, your nostrils. Like, you can just go on and on. They get picked on and criticized about anything. Why?
And then we don't have to pick on them because they're already picking on themselves because that's what society's made them pick on.
Yeah.
Like, no woman, it seems like, is ever happy with themselves.
No.
As much as a man standing there next to them tells them that he loves them every day and that they're beautiful, in the back of their mind, society's telling them that they're not. Yes. And unfortunately, that rings louder.
Oh, absolutely.
Than the man standing next to him every day, all day. It shouldn't be that way.
No.
But unfortunately, it is.
Right. Well, and I see it kind of on a day-to-day basis because, my wife did have weight loss surgery last year. She's lost it's over 100 pounds she's lost, which is, she had to do it for health reasons. Mm-hmm. But, she's now getting down to a point where she looks almost like she did when we first got together. And so in my mind, right, like I don't look at my wife in that perspective anymore. She's still gorgeous to me. She's still beautiful to me. Yep. But if I say, hey, babe, you've lost a lot of weight and you look really good, it carries a certain amount of weight. But a complete and utter stranger that tells them the exact same thing for whatever reason, because of the way society is, it bears a little bit more fruit than what I've said. Because I think it's a level of, like, for us it's expected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, well, you have to support me.
Right. You're only saying that because you got to, not because you want, which isn't true. It isn't true. I don't say things unless I mean them. And it's,
me either.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna fluff you up. Or,
I mean, my wife knows anytime that she dyes her hair blonde, I walk through the door because my wife changes her hair color quite often, and sometimes it's blonde in between
purple and pink and
trying to make it blonde so that she can then dye it another color. But like when I walk through the door and I see the blonde, I know I just get this this face. She's like, I know I'm changing it. I mean, that's exactly what comes out of her. I don't know what it is about blonde hair. It's the one thing that drives me crazy. Wow. And she knows. So
it drives you crazy in a negative fashion.
In a negative
way.
All right. Like,
I just wanted to make sure I was reading that correctly. Yeah. So
there's plenty of beautiful blonde women out there.
Right.
It's not my cup of tea.
Just doesn't float your boat?
It doesn't float my boat. And when my wife goes blonde, I'm just like, it's the one time that I'm like, you're not looking so pretty. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And she knows. She knows. Other than that, you're beautiful every day.
Right.
You're beautiful every day. And I love you.
Yeah. Corey's beautiful. My wife's beautiful. My daughter's beautiful. Right. But they do certain things that just...
Yeah.
I mean, everybody does, but it's, we're digressing a little bit. But anyway, I think the message that we're trying to get across is that the decision is a woman's, and she needs all the support because she's not making that decision lightly in the vast majority of those cases. And she needs support probably more at that moment in time than at any other point that they could possibly end up having to deal with stuff. And it's just unfortunate that the society is, I think things are becoming too commonplace. The technology has advanced so much, and more pregnancies go right than pregnancies go wrong. But even still, at the end of the day, when a person is confronted with that decision, they're making the right decision for them based on the information that they know at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And it's not up to me or you or any other man or person in political office or
it's between
faith.
It's between
them and their healthcare professional.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew where you were going. I was trying to get there, but
yeah.
So I think with that, I think we're going to wrap this one up. As always, like, share, subscribe. I'm Craig.
John.
We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks. Okay, so thanks for watching. Make sure that you go hit the like and subscribe. Make sure notifications are turned on so you get the latest videos. And remember, never stop conversating. If you want to send us topics, send those to topics@ConBroSationalists.com.